I am recording now. Deborah,
Okay, it's in a way on my
it's
script.
it's show time. Relax, relax, relax. You good? Okay, I'm going live now. You are live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21st Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. My name is Deborah Duncan, and I'm your moderator for addressing the impact adultification and associated implicit biases has on African American children's mental health. While we wait for more people to join us, let's get to know each other a bit. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Please put your answers in chat. Where are you joining us from? What's your favorite ice cream? How are you feeling today? What is helping you get through COVID-19? Describe your day in a color. What's your theme song? And just in case some of you are just joining us, I'm gonna just go over the questions once more. Where are you joining us from? Where are you joining us from? What's your favorite ice cream? How are you feeling today? What is helping you get through COVID-19? Describe your day in color. What's your theme song? Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this session. Margaret Ralston Payton. We are grateful for her support in helping make this event possible. Now, we have a few housekeeping items to go over together. This is a safe, supportive space. Please help us maintain a respectful and inclusive environment. Please mute yourself at all times. Remember that we are live on Facebook, so please use the chat function in Whova to interact with other attendees. For questions for the presenter, use the Q&A function in Whova. If you feel overwhelmed or need to talk to someone during the session, please call 512-472-4357. The number again is 512-472-4357. Press 1, then 1 again for immediate emotional support. Between sessions, you can visit our conference suite where we provide a safe haven. You'll find the conference suite and community under the main navigation in Whova. We have a number of surveys. If you registered for a continuing education credit or CEU, please check the chat for links. The first link will sign you in for your CEU. Please sign in at the beginning of the session. After the workshop, there will be another link for CEU evaluations. Please click on that link for a short evaluation, which also includes the CEU request form. Once you've completed the evaluation, you'll be taken to a page with a link to your CEU certificate. We'll also post a link for the workshop evaluation in chat. I also need to let you know that we have some great conference merchandise to be sure to check out our online store at ctaafsc.com/shop. Again, ctaafsc.com/shop. Please join me in welcoming our presenter, Jacqueline Miller. Jacqueline is the founder and CEO for Healthy Actions Interviewing Responsibly. For 30 years, she has worked with institutions and systems within the violence against women movement across the nation. With 25 years of training experience, Jacqueline has expertise in working at the intersections of gender-based violence and sexual abuse, the child welfare system, the impact homelessness has on youth, systems change, health implications of abuse, and reducing intimate partner homicide. For the past 5 years, she has worked to raise the awareness of the emerging topic of adultification across Texas and the nation. In 2020, Jacqueline contributed to the National Black Agenda Consortium by expanding its document to include a section on the impact domestic violence has on Black women and their overall well-being. Jacqueline holds a certification in financial social work. She is a member of the Domestic Violence Awareness Project and a collaborative partner of the ACE-DV projects of the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. You can learn more about Jacqueline by reading her bio in Whova. Now, let's enjoy the presentation. We'll be back together soon for a live question and answers. Now it is all yours, Jacqueline Miller.
Hello, I am Jacqueline Miller, the founder of Healthy Actions Intervening Responsibly, and I'm so excited to be part of another conference with Integral Care. This is my 3rd year, and I can say that every year has gotten better and better, and I'm very excited and glad that you have decided to be with me today and by attending this workshop. Today, I'm going to talk about addressing the impact adultification and associated implicit biases have on African American children's mental health. I've been doing this specific work over the past 6 years across the nation, and I have learned so much, and I continue to learn, and I look forward to sharing what I've learned, some of those things that is, with you during our time together. Our objectives today, we're going to learn the definition and risk factors of adultification during childhood periods. We're also going to understand the mechanisms of the association between adultification and mental health outcomes. Our guidelines, I'm asking that you share themes of what you've learned. Also that you stay engaged, that you stay present. These conversations are important and they are rare. Also, speak for yourself by using I statements and avoid talking on behalf of other people or communities. The first activity I like us to do together is let's build an affirmations castle. Let's put in the chat box some of those affirmations or words of affirmations that we share, that we tell ourselves. What's important to you? I'm looking at you are enough, beautiful, trust, smile, be you, breathe, and sing. So please continue to share with us in the chat box words of affirmations as we build this together. So imagine a child who experiences racism, lives in an unsafe neighborhood, and experiences violence on a regular basis. Their body's immune system is hijacked, and so is their developing brain. All of this impacts the child's attention, memory, planning, future stress responses, and the ability to learn new skills. So the definition we're working with today, as you keep all of those things in mind that we just talked about, the process of socialization in which children function at a more mature developmental stage because of situational context and necessity, especially in low resource community environments. So situational context, the child who is experiencing racism, the child who lives in an unsafe neighborhood, the child who experiences violence on a daily basis. Let's think about those situations that they might be in. Let's think about situations such as poverty, housing, unaffordable housing. Let's think about the healthcare system and the crisis that we're in within our nation right now. Those situational contexts that requires and calls for that child to develop quickly, to grow up very, very quickly, and to mature as well. So growing up, what shapes our experiences? Gender shapes our experiences in many, many ways, and it never operates in isolation. Our race, ethnicity, social orientation, religion, class, and other identity characteristics affect how we navigate the world. How I navigate the world and how I show up is very much influenced by me being a Black woman. As we work through the challenges of everyday life, the obstacles created by gender inequity can seem like unsurmountable barriers. Not much attention has been given to intersectional vulnerabilities that include race, gender, and class. Many children are pulled off track by life experiences that impede their abilities to learn and to flourish. And studies show us that gender difference is racialized. Black boys are perceived as older and more likely to be guilty than their white counterparts. Seasoned officers overestimate Black adolescent felony suspects' ages by 4 to 5 years, whereas they're looking at or dealing with a 13-year-old, they will see that individual as, see that child as an 18-year-old or perhaps a 21-year-old. Black males are more likely than their white counterparts to have their cases dismissed entirely because they should have never been arrested in the first place. And many of them, their cases are transferred to adult court. So historical perspectives, experiences of Black children during slavery and the cotton field is a narrative that majority of us have, that is passed down generationally, and certainly many of it is still in operation in terms of today's times and systems. Historically speaking, Black children were not part of the real fabric of American society or the real fabric of childhood, which when the cultural shifts took place with child labor laws, Black children's experiences were not considered and were not included. Perspectives on childhood are generally seen as a protected period of time that is relatively carefree. Let me ask you, do all children benefit from this childhood to humanity in terms of protection and having a relatively carefree life? What are your thoughts and experiences on that? Do all children, once again, benefit from childhood humanity? So cultural or racial biases and stereotypes is based on how adults perceive children in the absence of knowledge of children's behaviors, verbalizations, which can be based on race, looking at children as if they are older or more mature based on cultural or racial biases and stereotypes, and not according to children's behaviors or expressions. Some of the age-related stereotypes. Stereotypes not only persist towards adults, we know they also happen towards children and teenagers of minority groups as well. Between 5 and 8 years old is the age that we see children begin to be racially stereotyped. And as I continue to draw upon the research and studies that I took a look at for our time together today, I found that those very same research and studies were saying that teenagers are considered lazy at higher levels than adults. And also that they were considered to be prone to violence and unintelligent levels compared to adult groups. And members in adult groups. Children tend to be stereotyped as high in warmth, but low in competence. Teenagers are more likely to be seen as low in warmth and in competence. And for African American and Latinos, Arab Americans, and indigenous people, they tend to be perceived as low in warmth, sincerity, and competence. Whereas Asians, based on research and studies, are stereotyped as cold yet competent. So this helps us to really take a look at and to consider the experiences that our children are having in our society. Dehumanizing perceptions. Experimental studies found that characteristics associated with childhood, such as innocence and the need for protection, are afforded to Black children less than to their white counterparts. Black children are viewed in more dehumanizing ways than white children. This has been shown for Black boys 10 years and older, and for Black girls, younger, much younger than Black boys. Dehumanizer perceptions also tend to extend to American, Indian, Alaska Native, and Hispanic children in the same age group. Some of the methods of adultification are family traditions, family expectations, denying access to childhood humanity, parents' unrecognized traumatic experiences, that is big too, treating children like a confidant or like a partner or like a friend or like a little therapist. Also, methods of adultification happen intergenerationally as well as society's perceptions. Some of the risk factors of that is chronic or mental or physical illness in one or both parents, which then means maybe one parent is only available due to the other parent having health issues or health conditions or the crisis that we're all are living through right now. Divorce in the family, which leads to and means that perhaps a parent has been removed or is removed from the home. Another one could be the death of a parent. Chronically ill sibling and growing up in foster care. And I've heard so much about that, and as well as all of them. Some of the effects are anxiety, depression, mental illness, impaired relationships with peers, substance use, deterioration in their schoolwork, and difficulty in maintaining careers, as well as adult relationships. So this brings us to think and talk about like the theory of weathering, which high levels of chronic stress can lead to premature aging. I've heard so many girls in my work say they are 15, but they feel every bit of 51. The health of women of color may begin to deteriorate in early adulthood as a physical consequence of cumulative social economic disadvantages. So what do people have access to? What do children, what do they have access to? What are some of the resources? And when there's a lack of resources, very often that has a major impact on children as well as teens who might be taking care of themselves and who might be experiencing multiple systems in our society. The biases that shape the experience. Here's one example. A teacher shared that a group of her students, which were teenagers, came into the classroom dancing to a new song. And she was concerned about that things were going to get really chaotic at the moment. And so what do you think her response or approach was to the boys? Or do you think she addressed all of the students together as a whole? But what she had shared is that she did address the boys singly as a group. The boys were told to quit horsing around and to get in their seats. Boys are sometimes, many times for teachers, seen as active and full of energy. So she just felt that just redirect them and tell them to have a seat and to sit down and basically to cut it out. Well, from a sexual and policing standpoint and lens, the girls were approached very, very differently. And I once again will say that response for the girls was racialized. The white girls were talked to by the teacher. She talked to them about their behavior, their dancing moves and stuff like that, how dangerous it could be, that it was very sexualized. They might be exposing themselves to sexual predators. She talked to them about it being age appropriate and so forth and so on. But for the Black girls, she viewed it as them being the ringleader, that they were introducing inappropriate, promiscuous behavior to the class. And they were written up for that. They were written up for sexualizing the classroom. So how might this be handled for non-binary youth? If a youth doesn't relate to being male or female or hasn't decided, how could this whole situation be more complicated, or more anxiety might then be a result of it? Who might get involved at this point for non-binary youth? Who might get involved? How might this scene become a bigger scene? Okay, please share with us in the chat box what your thoughts are. So looking at and talking about like the teenagers, the transition between adolescenthood and adulthood, identity formation, including the transition between adolescence and adulthood for African Americans experiences with discrimination is likely to increase, which also increases their net level of vulnerability in relation to normative developmental tasks. So things tend to get very and more complicated for African American youth during and in the transitional stage between adolescenthood and adulthood. So what we want to, this leads us to, is all of these things we've covered thus far. We want to find out that child's perceptions, whether they feel like it's fair or unfair in terms of their experiences. And so the child that perceives the responsibility that they are undertaking at home, or how they're being treated in the communities or in society or by systems, if they feel that those experiences are unfair, that can determine their level of competence. The individual perceives their experience as stressful or traumatic or as irregular on a daily basis. You know, they anticipate these events in their daily course of life. Let's think about the competence level in that once again. So some of the low level of emotional competence might include that aggressive behavior, demanding, confrontational, slow, stubborn, hard to please, or perfectionist. Once again, if they feel like the situation that they are experiencing or what they're living through is unfair. Well, let's just say, and think about children who might consider it as fair. And so we're going to understand the high levels of emotional competence. These periods of time, the child might perceive it as a process or perceive it as it's fair, all because they may have the support that is given to them for the duties or the tasks that they are undertaking. Also, that their behaviors or their help is going, it's not going unnoticed, or the responsibility is acknowledged and they are rewarded for those responsibilities. And again, where they feel like it's fair, there is a lot of parental support that goes along with that, where mom may say, okay, I'm going to need you to do this and that because I'm taking a new class, and we're going to celebrate it together afterwards, or it's only for 6 weeks. This won't be forever. It's very, very temporary, and I appreciate your help. So they may function at a high level of emotional competence, which includes being assertive, warm, decisive, careful, meticulous, and they may be very patient. Okay, so the differences in those lists between like low levels and high levels, it can give us a sense of really truly how that individual is feeling. And how we find out how they're feeling, we ask questions and have a conversation. So let's ask, and please put your answers in the chat box. What roles does stereotyping have in mistaken age calculations? What are some of those stereotypes, once again, that may cause someone to miscalculate someone's age? Let's put that in the chat box. So the impact of implicit biases, society perceptions about children of color, particularly African-American males, are known to directly influence the judgment of professionals in their interactions with them. These negative societal perceptions and attitudes become intertwined within social structures. That's what we know. What we believe about young people, it really truly does matter. It informs how we treat them and what they come to believe about themselves. So during this transitional turning points, African-American emerging adults experience these turning points in the context of institutional and racial discrimination, such as racial residential discrimination, policing, the academic system, the healthcare system, which systematically is a disadvantage towards African Americans. Emerging adulthood consists of turning points such as education, employment, parenthood, and marriage. And this period between 18 and 29 years old is where we see this developmental period marked by extended identity exploration. So certainly how we interact with them, engage with them, the perceptions that we have, the biases that we also allow to influence our interactions and engagements with our children. One person's actions may seem insignificant, but together, a community's collective one things can lead to real social transformation. I am going to show a video now, and I would love to get your observations and your input as this video is being shown.
Good morning. How are you?
Cool.
So, can we talk about how you got here?
Yeah, you think I got a funny looking face? I just thought it was funny.
Hey kids, I'm telling you, go right here.
Man, we ain't doing nothing.
Go right here before I'm called cops.
So, you didn't do anything?
Nope.
Then what's all this?
Depends on who's reading it, I guess.
Well, looks broken. Skateboarding, huh?
Yes.
Is this the first time you've hurt yourself?
No, I get hurt all the time.
At home?
At home? He hurt himself skateboarding at the park.
Okay, ma'am. I'm going to have a counselor come in and speak with you.
A counselor? For what? He's okay.
Well, I done told you them tricks were gonna put you in the hospital.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, too. A nurse will be in a few minutes to help you check out.
What's up?
That doctor thought I did this to him.
How you doing?
Bye. It ain't fair.
Fair has nothing to do with this. This is about you taking responsibility for your actions. Look, I know so many young men just like you that didn't do anything. And yet, most of them are in prison.
You don't know me. I ain't going to no prison.
If you don't want to end up in prison, you're going to have to get some new priorities and probably some new friends, too. Look, you're not getting any younger. You need to get an education so you can get a good job.
Like you just like everybody else. You think you see, but you don't see. You see what you want to see.
I see what's in this folder. It shows me what you've been doing.
I ain't doing nothing.
I am not doing anything. Stop!
I ain't doing nothing.
I'm not doing anything. And yes, you were. Get to the timeout chair. Now, please. I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
So let's talk about what did we see in this video? What was happening here? What were your thoughts about the doctor? What were your thoughts about the therapist? Like, share your thoughts. Is that something that that resonates with you, or that you've experienced? Many of you may be parents yourselves. So what spoke to you? Was there anything that you found yourself being frustrated about? Let's share that in the chat box. So in terms of making critical change, it requires critical tasks such as understand, prevent, and reduce sources and expressions of racism in the daily lives of our children and our youth. We need to understand the racial, ethnic beliefs and attitudes of non-parent primary caregiver adults or foster parents. We need to understand and check our own biases. We need to understand the impact of verbal and nonverbal behaviors such as word choices, verbal tone, eye contact, degree of interpersonal distance, and facial expressions on children and families we work with. Like, again, look at our own biases and how we might be misinterpreting a lot of what families are trying to tell us and what we just truly don't even understand. But we need to ask questions. So the rehumanizing processes, findings suggest that adults who work with and volunteer with children in the US, and I would say all over, require ongoing support to counter stereotypes and develop positive racial, ethnic attitudes and beliefs, which means this is ongoing. It's ongoing work and learning about individuals and their families. The work must reach beyond finding more sophisticated ways of understanding the complexities of prejudice to finding the most effective ways of preventing and addressing prejudice and its consequences from childhood through adulthood. So many times we dismiss what someone might share their experiences were when it comes to discrimination. We talk them down, or we talk them out of thinking or believing or even verbalizing what they feel they recently experienced as it pertains to racism or discrimination. Interpersonal interventions include not only counseling, but social belonging and values affirmation activities for those from stigmatized racial ethnic groups, as well as education interventions to raise awareness of both conscious and unconscious biases. and stereotyping among non-stigmatized people. So yes, we have a lot of work to do, and it is our responsibility to rehumanize our children and groups of people, particularly African Americans. So we can do this work. It's most effective, and families and individuals deserve this work from us to be done through dignity frameworks, dignity and dignified relationships. And what does that look like? What does it look like to treat someone based on dignity? Share with us in the chat box. What does that look like, or what does that mean? How can that be modeled? What are some of the strategies or frameworks that you use, or how do you utilize dignity framework, or have you even used it before? What does it look like for everyone to feel they are worthy? Everyone in the family that we're working with to feel they are worthy, every individual. We also need to acknowledge that households also have power struggles and power structures. Not everyone in a household has the freedom or has power. So households are also power structures. Looking at nobility and rank and humanity, it is often pushed aside when we are doing our work, or when we're working with individuals, or when we're coming into a scenario, or into a situation, or into a family, or into an individual's life. We often come in as a professional. So what we can do to give them a sense of humanity, or we work with them from a place of humanity, is validating their experience. And there's so many ways we can validate the experience. Put in the chat box, please, what are some ways we can validate someone's experience? Now, this, as I think about validating someone's experiences, I think about the empathy blockers, like empathy blockers, or non-empathy statements, such as when someone is telling their story. You know, sometimes we'll pull out one of our stories and say, you think that's something? Well, let me tell you about this. You think you went through something, you should hear what I went through. Let me tell you what happened to me. And that's considered empathy blocking, right? Or asking someone, so why are you crying? It's not that bad. Well, just it's good that you're still alive. That's empathy blocking. But how can we validate a person's or human's experience? Also, the humanity aspect, the value that we have for one another through shared community experience, that gives us humanity. We share that. How is that used in certain ways? Or how is it pushed aside? How have you experienced or seen in your work, or your family, your community, or your own life, where your humanity has been pushed aside, or where you see humanity that has been pushed aside? Also, let's take a look and consider liberation versus oppression in the daily lives of people, the people that we work with, the people that we serve, we ourselves or our family. Like, what does that look like? Are they truly experiencing life from liberation or oppression? Okay, what are we doing to empower families? What are you doing to empower families? Who gets honor and who gets respect? Like, how is that determined? Also, understand that everyone in the household is not allowed to talk. Everyone in the household is not allowed to share their experiences. And let's think about in terms of someone who has a mental condition, or who have mental health challenges or consequences. Are they allowed to speak? Are they allowed to be fully themselves and to bring themselves fully in, without judgment, without fear, without being under surveillance, and without being monitored? And what does that look like? Does everyone in the household feel like they are worthy? Also, do you say to people that you're working with, or who tells you their story, I am honored that I am able to serve you. It is an honor to serve you. I'm so fortunate to serve you. How may I serve you? And so, but then what happens very often is we put rank back in place, like who we are over them, or the rank we have over them, or the decision maker that we are. Like, you know, we can make decisions and determine their fate or what can happen based on the information they give us, but then also based on how they respond and react to us, or if they respond back to us, if they return our calls, and what our narratives say, right? So that's a big deal. Also, in the focus of childhood adversity, living with a parent that has a mental illness is one of the ACE questions. And it is considered to be part of the childhood adverse experiences. How is that information used? Who benefits from that information? How does that information serve the family and meet their needs? And how do we use that information to meet them where they're at? Do parents have the same resources? Well, let's think about it like this. There are children, some have 2 grandparents, some have none, right? Some children have 2 parents, some have none. So how do we work with families and parents and in terms of the resources and the accessibility that they have to resources? And then finally, self-determination. Are we working with families based on self-determination? And that truly that they have a vision, goals, and hopes for themselves that may truly not match ours and may not look or even be anywhere near what we think they should do or what we think they should have. So once again, dignity framework. So Nelson Mandela says, there is no greater revelation about society other than how it treats its children. And how true is this? So some additional materials and tools that I have here on the slide, and there's so much more that we can add to this list, and maybe perhaps there's some that you are familiar with or that you know about. I want to give this opportunity for you to put those and share that with us in the chat box. And thank you so much for sharing. Maybe there are programs that you know specifically about that works with African-American children in the community, especially in the challenging times that we're in right now. That could be very challenging. We can think about families that are isolated and families that we don't have connection with. I want to thank you so much for being here once again, choosing this workshop to participate in. Here is my information. Please reach out to me. Stay in touch with me. I love making new friends, and I'm just so thrilled once again to be part of this conference with Integral Care. Thank you, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Deborah, you are muted.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you all for having me today. I'm so honored again to Integral Care and to the Planning Committee, which I am just excited to be part of year after year now. So thank you all for being with us again today. And I understand one of the questions are, what's the definition or what does adultification entail? So I'm going to keep it simple. So adultification is where children are put in and or take on adult roles and responsibilities. So that means those responsibilities do not belong on their shoulders. However, they take those tasks on out of circumstances. And here's a key thing about that, is that they often lack the authority to go along with the responsibilities. And a lot of times where children are taking on adult roles, put in adult situations, When they start acting grown, if you all know what I mean, then there's even more problems because of that. So very simply is adultification is where children are put in adult roles and taking on adult responsibilities and are expected to perform at more mature levels than what they have the capacity to do so.
It's great to have you back, Jacqueline, with us. And we are wondering if there are any more questions that anyone has. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand virtually, put it in the chat. You can you can also share your question there. If you raise your hand, you'll be unmuted so you can share. And remember to put your questions for our presenters also in the Q&A.
Dennis Hall. Dennis, you may speak now.
Okay, it looks as if we have children that are put in adult roles and taken on parental responsibilities. What's the difference between adultification and being a child?
Well, the difference is it's going to be like the capacity of that child or the maturity level of that child or the developmental stage that that child is in. For instance, there's a 5-year-old that I know about whose mom just had a new baby. And so the mom has some mental health challenges going on in addition to substance abuse. So the 5-year-old tends to the needs of the newborn baby, which means that child is changing the baby, making the baby's bottle, feeding the baby, and then the child has learned to burp the baby. So every time the baby cries, it's the 5-year-old who responds to that. So certainly it's a great thing that, you know, that the 5-year-old would be attentive to the needs of their little loved one, their little sibling, but it's like an ongoing thing with now there's an expectation of the child, as well as the child now looking in and attending to the needs of the mom. She's able to identify and see when mom is not coherent, when mom is not able to, you know, respond and get up at night with the baby. So now that child has taken on those responsibilities and may not be, you know, even completely at the level of taking on those roles as such as the newborn child.
And what is the difference between adultification and child labor?
So child labor, that came into play back when there was some shifts in society in terms of what childhood really looked like. And that, because originally children were seen as miniature adults. They weren't even seen as children. So when those social constructs began to get in place, there were certain children, such as African-American Black children, were left out of that whole shift and the reconstruction of what childhood meant. So I hope that answers the question. But when it comes to adultification comes into play where children, like family roles and family expectations of the children to perform certain duties, to do certain things to fulfill their role in the family, versus in the way sometimes the parenting styles are or how those children are raised, versus like the child labor law. So I hope I made that clear, or the shifts in child labor. So not all children benefited from the shifts when it came to child labor or child labor laws. Not all children had access to childhood humanity when those changes took place.
Okay, thank you for that. And do you have a recommended training curriculum for educators on explicit biases and creating an inclusive classroom and culture?
Well, thank you. I love that question. That's a great question. So I actually have done training centered around implicit, explicit biases and classroom practices. So I've developed that myself. So yes, I am available, and you can feel free to reach out to me. My email address should be found in Hoover.
Okay. How can we stop adultifying children?
Ooh, that is a great, great question. How can we stop adultifying children? One, and the first thing is adults recognize our behaviors, and that very often those behaviors are inappropriate for children based on their age, their maturity level, and their developmental stage. That's number one. And that we should take on responsibilities that belong on our shoulders, that do not belong on children. So the burden lies on adults and not on children. A lot of times we see it as children are responsible for this, but no, it's adults that's responsible for it. In fact, Texas has a law that talks about there is no defense laws when it comes to someone older who is entering into like a dating relationship with a child, and that there's no excuse, there's no defense for saying, oh, I didn't know she was 13. She told me she was 25. Oh my goodness, I didn't know that was a child. I didn't know that was a baby. I didn't know. They told me they was 23. I didn't. So the burden of that lies on the adult and not on the child. So we need to take responsibility for ourselves. And that then means asking questions and not making assumptions. Back again, what I shared in the training, based on race, a lot of Black children are seen to be older than what they are based on a lot of stereotypes based on race, when again, the responsibility and the burden lies on the shoulders of adults to not make assumptions, to not handle people based on stereotypes, but to get clarity and to ask more questions.
Okay, do we have any questions in the chat for maybe a hand raised that maybe someone would like to make a comment about the videos or anything that you saw? And I believe we have another question too that just came in. Children who play adult roles end up being traumatized. Please explain the help the children. Please explain the help the children who have been, how to help the children who have been adultified need. What type of help do they need? Please explain help the children who have been adultified need.
Okay, so please explain help. I'm going to refer you back.
Maybe let me go back. Children who play adult roles end up being traumatized. Please explain the help the children who have been adultified need.
So, as I'm going to refer back to one of the things I covered and said in the training, is that having a conversation with the child, like getting information from them. And we can start out with, and a lot of times we have these conversations with kindergartners, little children, about if they think something is fair, and we can learn from them on what they're thinking. We can even get a sense of the level of stress that it had on them. What are their future thoughts about it? Do you think this is fair? Do you think this is unfair? And one example is, even as it relates to trauma, there was a divorce in a family, and the father ended up got shot, and then the child saw the father taken away from the household in handcuffs. Yes, that's very traumatizing for a child, because now the child is thinking about the police, and the police getting daddy, and the police pulling daddy over in the car, and my dad getting shot. And the child saw the father when he fell after getting shot. So with this child, in terms of like adultification and as it relates to like the trauma, is the dad went to live with someone else, and this child's younger sibling was also living with the dad. So let's go from like the eyes and the perspective of the child. The child was more focused on the fact that their younger sibling is living with dad. And they felt like it was so unfair that they get to live with dad. So once again, what's important to the child? I know we adults, we can identify so many levels and areas of trauma, right? Even particular to that situation. But for that child, they were more concerned about and overwhelmed with, and it's unfair that I'm not staying with dad. I want dad. I want dad's time. I want dad's attention. And they were denied that. So it's like, once again, going with what the child is thinking, how the child is feeling, and then we work from there. Because again, we adults we might want to focus on, okay, let's talk about safety because the dad getting shot and maybe, maybe the family is at risk. And that could all be true. That could all be true, but we may not necessarily need the child involved in that in terms of safety planning. So that whole piece there, like future safety planning and what that looks like, but most immediately, like right now, what is this child feeling, sensing, thinking as it relates to what they consider to be as unfair?
Thank you. We have a few hands in the chat that I see virtually. So Angela Bland, could you please present your question? And then Dennis Hall. Angela has a question. Okay, Dennis, would you like to ask your question? And then
yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question about the different learning styles. Perhaps it could. The style that's taught is basically everybody in the same box, and what we've learned is Caucasians are more low context, and Asians and Caucasians or African Americans are more high context in terms of learning. In other words, more hand gestures, more body language, more nonverbal. And I'm wondering if this has been discussed much about looking at education styles in terms of everybody doesn't learn the same way and how that would impact, let's say, African Americans or Latinos that's coming from a style of more of a low context culture in terms of learning styles. And is there anything you could share on that?
Well,
which would give a disadvantage, and it's unfair to teach everybody from the same context.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for your question. That is an excellent question. And I'd say we certainly have, there's room to grow with that. I don't know of any educational settings that addresses this topic. I know that I have been doing a lot of work trying to get connected with educators to offer trainings such as this. But what I can tell you, and you said it, and I want to pull that piece out, is culture is critical. Culture is very, very important. But what I am seeing based on adultification, based on which also then brings in back to us the topic of stereotypes, and looking at that whole piece, is that because Black children and Latinos are very much seen to be older than what they are, they're handled very differently within the educational system, even directly within the classroom. Like there's a lot of like disciplinary actions. For instance, Black children sometimes, or Black girls in particular, are seen to be like having an attitude. Like teachers might say when they have an attitude or how they express themselves. And you're absolutely right about how we express ourselves. I speak with my hands, but a lot of times it's that the verbalization and even the physical expressions is very much misunderstood and misinterpreted as having an attitude or trying to be too grown. And a lot of times when, educators think that, a student is trying to step toe to toe with them, there's going to be some consequences for that. So there's lots of need and room for us to grow in the area of the educational setting. And I so appreciate you bringing it up, because we do see a lot of times students of color are escorted out the classroom, all because there's a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of how they express themselves and what they say. And then I want to add this one thing as well. Going back to like culture, a lot of times our children are not allowed to be themselves. And that means how they express themselves and how they identify as well. There are lots of scenarios all across this nation where Black children are penalized for dress code violations, including their hair, where there was a wrestler, a student who wrestles, wears locks. And he was told before he could participate in the wrestling match, he had to cut them like really short above his ear, and that there were no exceptions to the rule. So we just see that adultification is playing out in so many ways for children of color, which in so many instances, it puts them in situations that an adult roles, or where it's even perceived that them speaking up for themselves or trying to affirm themselves, that is seen as them being disrespectful. Whereas they're only, trying to be more, on the positive and expressing themselves and speaking their minds. But a lot of times that just isn't allowed.
Thank you. The next question comes from Dejay, and it states, this is the question: I am a social worker at an elementary school. Do you have tips for having conversations about adultification with parents?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your question. Absolutely. Talking, like having conversation, and well, I would say this first. Creating a safe space for parents to be honest, to be vulnerable, to be curious, to explore, because a lot of times parents might have questions more about how to questions related to their children, but unfortunately a lot of times of what is heard is that, well, you can't be a good parent, or you're challenged, or I wonder how things are going with the children if you're asking these questions. So I would say the first thing is creating a safe environment for parents to be honest, to be vulnerable, to express themselves, to express their stress, the moments, and also express times where they're really struggling and challenged, and then because a lot of times when families, African-American families, are living in poverty, that could be the very thing that puts them under the microscope or under surveillance by the system, because we aren't asking questions. We aren't asking the right questions. And a lot of times we jump to conclusions. We make these assumptions that maybe the children are maybe they're not eating, or maybe this and maybe that. And so that's the reality for Black people, for Black families, is that we have to be careful with the questions that we ask and the needs that we say we have, because now this can turn into a whole big situation where they may call the system, and then the next thing you know, I have a child welfare case, and all I was doing is just trying to get help. So a lot of times help turns into unintended consequences, and so that we need to be careful with. So I would say, once again, the first step to it all is creating a safe space. And that's going to take some time, probably. I'm sure it'll take some time to build rapport and for parents to be comfortable with talking about it. And then I would say maybe have a talk about family roles, expectations. There's one question I'll give is, do you expect your children to do well on behalf of the family? Like, do you expect them to do so great in school because it's a reflection on me and you're making me look bad and you're embarrassing me? That is a heavy one right there, but yet that is a critical one that we can learn a lot from, and help to talk with parents about their thoughts in terms of their family structure.
Next question. Are there resources or articles about this topic that you can share?
Yes, there are loads and there are lots. Well, I'm going to say loads in terms of just like the topic solely itself is very limited, but it's growing. But when it comes to some of the overlapping issues like context and intersectionality, there seems to be a lot more. I know when I first started doing this work, it was very, very limited. It was very far. It was few and in between. And so, so over the past couple of years, I would say there has been more research to come out, and you should be receiving the materials that I submitted, the articles, and so forth. So there is really a lot. And in terms of like COVID, I would say right now, there isn't, and I'm only bringing this up in terms of like how much is out there and available. There has not at this moment been a lot of research and articles as it relates and ties into COVID-19. However, we do know due to the pandemic, more children are being exposed to adultification because, you know, some of their parents are essential workers and it's taking their parents out of the home for extended periods of time, which in those cases is leaving children to take on managing the house.
And what you just mentioned is a great segue into the next question. Adultification seems to happen due to context and circumstances. Can you say more about what can be done immediately to begin the changes, as well as some of the long-term things we can do to stop this?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So like most immediately right now, a lot of families that we are working with or that we worked with are isolated. So pretty much the communities all over have been shut down or limited, like, right? Limited access. A lot of families that were going to, you know, their children were in recreation camps or after school programs. You know, that's put on hold for right now, which then means a lot of families are living in isolation. So how can we get in contact with those families that we know were struggling even before the shutdown, right? So who are they? Where are they? And if we haven't been in touch with those families, why haven't we been in touch with those families? How can we get in touch with those families? That's the other thing. And then the next thing is a lot of people right now are struggling with their basic needs being met in terms of food, shelter, employment. Like a lot of people have lost employment as a result of this pandemic for many different reasons, being laid off or, you know, having some fear about getting vaccinated is a big one that is coming up for our community. And I understand a lot of the reasons why. So with that, families are struggling terribly right now. They were in poverty, but they've gone deeper into poverty. So how can we come alongside families and so that they can get a hot meal, so they can get food without being under surveillance, without maybe there being more questions where they might end up in the system, all because they express the need for to be able to put food on the table. Okay, so again, the tangible, basic human needs are challenged right now in terms of being met because of our national crisis that we're living through right now.
Okay, I see that Angela Bland is back. I'm not sure if your mic was just muted or something, but if your question has not been addressed, would you please pose it now? Angela? Okay, while we're waiting for Angela, we'll go with Catherine. Catherine, please address your question. I'm wondering if their mic is muted. It looks as though they may be muted. So Jacqueline, maybe we can just, I would just, while they're doing that, I actually was wondering about if anyone had any reactions to the videos that you showed. And I would just mention that I have a son, and when I saw some of the things in the video, I could actually reflect upon some things that happened during his earlier years. So is Angela or Catherine ready for their question?
Jacqueline.
Okay.
Jacqueline, oh,
Go ahead.
oh, okay. I just wanted to make a comment. My name is also Jacqueline, and I wanted to thank you, Jacqueline, for an absolutely phenomenal presentation. I currently work at the Safe Alliance, which is an agency committed to supporting survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, commercial exploitation, sex trafficking, and also child abuse. And your discussion about adultification is so important. Part of the reasons why so often we hear about young children being abused, both physically, sexually, emotionally, all of the ways, is because they're talked about in terms of even young Black women having breasts at a younger age, having developed bodies, young men being perceived as aggressive and deserving of police violence. And I just think it's so phenomenal the way that you are bringing attention to these issues, because they intersect very importantly, not only through the lens of mental health, but the school to prison pipeline, incarceration, the ways in which we are policed and surveyed, even the deaths, and the reason why Black children are so often not given the empathy and compassion that they deserve. I think about Trayvon Martin because they aren't seen as children. And those legacies of racism and sexism continue and reverberate even in this current moment. And so having an understanding of adultification is so significant and important. I did want to just share a few books that have helped me further understand adultification. And some of them are kind of, academic, if you will, but they're really important because they just really help further the conversation. And one of them is by Nikki Jones, and it's called Between Good and Ghetto. And it talks about really the ways in which Black young women are socialized in communities and cities to accept violence that happens to them, but also violence that happens in their communities. And the other one that I think is really important and speaks a lot to adultification is The Push Out. And it's by Monique Morris, and it's called Push Out: The Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools. And there's another one by Victor Rios, which is Punished: Policing the Lives of Black and Latino Boys. And all three of those books really highlight what Jacqueline has talked about today in terms of the surveillance of Black children, the way that they are funneled in their education environments to be considered ADHD when they do just normal everyday kid behaviors, the way that they are funneled into the juvenile justice system for things that white children are forgiven of every single day, and the ways in which really we as a community have to begin to stop policing our own children, to stop saying that young women are acting grown if they have breasts at 12. They can't help if they have breasts at 12. But how do we talk to Black men and women about not hypersexualizing Black children? How do we hold Black men and women accountable when they abuse and molest children who are Black and brown? And so I just thank you, Jacqueline. I pray that maybe SAFE can bring you in as a trainer at some point, because you have such a wealth of information. And as we continue to support so many young people who are impacted by violence and abuse, I think it's critical that our advocates and our leadership understand the ways and the roles of adultification in hurting and harming Black children. So thank you so much for your incredible work. This was an absolutely phenomenal presentation. And thank you to Central Texas, Family Support Conference for creating this platform.
Thank you,
Thank you
Ms.
so much, Jacqueline.
I apologize for that. Thank you, Ms. Jacqueline Smith. Could you drop those books in the chat, please?
I would be happy to, most definitely. I'll do that now.
And I am familiar with, and I support the book, reading the book Push Out. Definitely. I do have that on my reference list as well at the end. in my PowerPoint. So yes, totally. That
Oh,
is
perfect. I
absolutely.
missed it. I was also like, I'm trying to work and take care of
No, no,
household.
no,
So I
no.
missed it. But thank
You're
you for putting
absolutely
that.
fine. Yes, you're absolutely fine on that. I just want to give a voice and echo that. Yes, that book is absolutely amazing. And I think definitely it does go with tie into our topic. I do want to just quickly say, Jacqueline, I thank you so much. And I would love to come to Safe Alliance and do some training. And just as it ties into how adultification connects with violence and abuse, is that a lot of times children become the protector
Yes.
in violent situations, absolutely
Yes,
protecting
they
their
do.
parents, particularly protecting their mom. And so
Mhm.
taking on those roles, and then also able to identify when there is a need, when they initiate some of those responsibilities, even just to keep their mom from having to do so much. So yeah, that's
true.
a big one. Yes.
That's
Thank you.
huge. Thank you for that. Yes.
Sure.
Okay, I would like to thank Jacqueline Miller for sharing her knowledge and insight with us. And many thanks to all of you for joining us today. The other thing we'd like for you to do is to please take a few minutes to complete the workshop survey. It helps us know how we're doing. If you're seeking CEUs, remember that your forms will be in the survey. The links are in the chat. Thanks again, and please stay safe. And remember that your health is our community's wealth. Join us tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.